Hello. My voice is dead. Very dead. Hello, guys. So yesterday I got sick. So today, well, you may be like, but you sounded fine yesterday. That's because I had like what felt like just a minor sore throat at the start, so I still recorded stuff. But then later in the day, during French class, it was like, hey, you're gonna die. So then I came home and sat on the couch, laid on the couch, dead. So this morning I'm feeling a lot better. Still have a dead voice, so I can't talk that much, as I'm talking a bunch. So I'm just going to do the intro, because if I talk more than the intro, my voice is going to be more than just dead, probably. So for now I'm going to do the Binky and the Advent Calendar. So here's picture proof. Advent Calendar. Number 14 is a snowman with joy, hope, and love on it. Well, on a sign. And I see
No, I forgot about that stuff.
Jelly play turns your water into goo. Okay, so I might do a video about this later. So I'll do the jelly I'll do the jelly play in another video, probably when I'm no longer sick. So hope you're excited for that. And now it's time for host Lauren to do whatever she's doing. Okay, I'm out. So my voice doesn't become any more dead. Okay, bye.
Alright, so since Steven's sick today, I'm going to be making a little toy that you can give as a gift if you're an adult making it for your kids, or an older kid, or if you get an adult to help you, maybe you could make it for one of your siblings. So
I'm watching from over here.
So mostly you need a box, preferably one that has a lid that's attached. Like this is a little jewelry box I got, I think from Claire's or something. This one didn't originally have the lid attached, it's just a gift box from the dollar store, but I added some tape so that it's attached on the inside and the outside, and it opens the way it's supposed to. It doesn't need to open all the way flat, it just needs to be attached. And you're going to want some fabric. I like fleece, polar fleece for just about anything. Felt will work. Any fabric you have lying around will work, really. Maybe not like knitted fabric, like t-shirt material might kind of come apart on you, might not be the best for this project. So I've already cut out some pieces here. Actually, to start, I designed some things. So you want to make a little toy like a little animal or a little doll that's going to fit inside your box. So I started by drawing out some ideas. The idea is to make it something that you can just cut out a front and a back and sew them together to make the thing. You don't want to make it too complicated because they're little. So the first one I cut out is a little cat. And I made a little fish that could be a little toy for the cat. I'm thinking that's what I'm going to put in this little box. And we could say that the padded side where you're meant to put jewelry is like the little cat's bed. And then in this one, I cut out some pieces to make like a doll with hair and a dress. And I'm going to make her a bed in this box. And I think I'm going to draw maybe a window or something over here. So I've got some markers to do that. And I also cut out, I cut out like what's going to be some sheets and a pillow for her. And I also cut out a cat shape to make her a little cat that can go with her in her little home. And I've got some stuffing we can use. And I've got my needles and some thread and this chopstick to help me stuff some stuffing in to the little parts.
And then purple glue.
Yeah, purple glue. So this is just the school glue that I like. Any glue is gonna work. I just like that it's purple when it goes on so I can see where it is, and then it dries clear just like any other school glue. So to start with, the bed in here is already made because you don't need much for a little cat bed, but we need to put a bed in here for our doll. So I've got this piece of fleece that's going to be her bed, and I cut it so that it fits in there. I'm going to glue one side down so that you can't lose it, so it can just fold over and cover her. But I want to sew down a little bit just to make it look a little bit more like a sheet. So I'm going to grab some embroidery floss. Maybe green. With embroidery floss, I like to start with a slip knot on this end. So you just tie it around so that you can pull the loop smaller. And what that's going to do is help us secure our first stitch so that the knot can't be pulled through the fabric. So we'll just fold this back just a little bit like that and put the needle in from the back here. And then put it back in. And then I want to make sure to get that loop, get the needle through that loop on the way back down, because then I can tighten that loop on the thread, and when I pull it, now that stitch isn't going anywhere. So I'm just going to continue. I'm not doing anything fancy. Anything that'll hold the fabric together will work. Just try to keep it neat. But the good thing with these is they're just small cute toys, so even if you don't make them perfectly neat, they kind of just take on their own charm. If you're having trouble holding it together straight, you can get like just a sewing pin, and you can put that on there so that it'll hold it down for you. Just like that, so then you don't have to hold it yourself. So I stitched up there, so we've got like a line there. And I'm just tying off on the back. I like to go through that last stitch and then tie kind of around it just to make sure that it's nice and secure. Alright, so tie that off and snip the string. Always keep your needles in your pin cushion. If you don't have a pin cushion, try maybe a magnet or something, but don't leave them just lying out on the table.
Because you could hurt yourself.
Alright, so I've got my box. I'm gonna glue this in a second, but first we've got all this white space here that's like her bedroom wall. So I'm thinking I'm gonna draw something on there.
Decoration.
You could do all sorts of things. You could glue some wrapping paper on there so it's like wallpaper. You could use some square stickers to look like picture frames. There's lots of things you could do. For someone sick who couldn't do a video, you're sure over here a lot.
Yeah, I am, but that's just because I'm kind of curious.
I dropped a lid somewhere.
Oh, you did?
There it is. So these markers, this isn't sponsored or anything, but I really like them. They're Prismacolor. I don't know if you can see that. They're Prismacolor markers, and they've got like a small end and a big end, and some of them are like even fancier. This one has like, it has a small end, but then it has a slightly bigger end, and then it has a big end on this end too.
It's easier when you have markers in different sizes, because then you can use them.
But you can
situation.
But you can use whatever you have around. You could use paint, you could use different markers, crayons. I'm sure you've got some art supplies around somewhere. So I drew some like striped wallpaper and a window with a tree and a little birdie in it. And there's a picture frame with a flower. And now I'm gonna glue this piece of fabric that I sewed that line on into here. I like school glue, but if you've got like a hot glue gun or something, that'll work. And I just like this purple stuff. See? You can definitely see where the glue is. Sometimes it's hard to tell with the clear stuff, but this stuff dries clear. So make sure you're not gluing the end that you sewed, you're gluing the other end down. And you want to make it so that the nice side is the side that's going to be on top when you fold it in half, the side that doesn't have your knots and stuff on it. So just glue that right in there. And then while we're waiting for that to dry, we're gonna sew up some other pieces here. Just make sure it's pressed down, make sure the glue soaks into the fabric, because that's what's gonna make it stick. So we'll set that down to dry. I'm gonna sew together these two pieces for her pillow. I think I'm gonna continue with my green embroidery floss, but you can use whatever you want. You don't even need to use embroidery floss if you don't want your stitches to be as obvious. You can use something thinner. And for this one I'm going to make my slip knot in the end again, but I'm going to start it just in one piece of fabric, so then the knot will be hiding in between. And again, put the thread through that slip knot to make sure it's in there nice and tight. Put your other piece of fabric together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these two together on 3 sides, and then we'll put some stuffing in to make her pillow fluffy before we sew up the last side there. So I like to just do, I think it's called a whip stitch, I'm not really sure. I just put the needle through from the top, from the front to the back, and then put it around to the front again. And that's how I like to sew up edges. But if you would rather sew them up a different way, that's fine, as long as it's gonna hold it together. There's not a whole lot of rules with this project. And I'm going kind of fast too, so my stitches are not very even, but you'll get the idea. Alright, so now I've got 3 sides sewn up. It's still open at the top here. I'm going to take some of my polyfill here. It's better if you take it in like little bits. It makes it not lumpy. But you don't need a whole lot to fill up this tiny little pillow. So I'll put that in there. And then once that's in there, you can sew up the other end. So the last stitch, this is almost done. If you put your needle in the back and bring it up in between the 2 pieces of fabric, so your needle's coming up in between, then you can make your knot. And then before you cut that extra string, put your needle back in between those 2 pieces of fabric and pull it out like in the middle of the pillow somewhere. Because then you can pull that knot inside, and if you pull this string while you're cutting it, it'll pull that end back inside so that you can't see it. So now we have a little pillow, and that will go in the bed. And now I'm going to start sewing up my little doll. So starting with, it's kind of like a gingerbread man shape, and I'm just going to sew around the sides again, and then I'll probably sew around her limbs and like halfway up her head so that I can stuff the polyfill in from her head. Now, I'm going to use thread so that it's not as obvious as the embroidery thread. But as I was saying, you could make anything that you want. You could make a simpler doll. You could make a little monster or an animal, like I'm going to do with the other one here. Whatever you can imagine that's relatively simple to make. So what I like to do with the thinner thread, I don't know if you can see that, but I thread it onto the needle and then I fold it in half and tie a knot in the end here, tie the 2 ends together. Instead of doing a slip knot, because then what I can do is again pick up just 1 piece and go in from the what will be the inside, and when I pull that through, there's now a loop where the 2 threads meet that may or may not show on camera, I'm not sure. So you can go back in and put your needle through that loop, and then that will make it stay nice and secure. And then I'm just going to stitch it up the same way that I did the pillow with just the whip stitch. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. My shapes aren't even exactly the same. They kind of even out a little bit while you're sewing them together if you try to keep the edges lined up. Just because there's a little bit of a stretch to the polar fleece. If you're using something like felt, it won't be as forgiving as you're sewing it, but also it'll be easier to cut even shapes. So whatever you're more comfortable using. The Polar Fleece is going to end up making like a better stuffy because it does stretch a bit, so you're able to stuff it a bit more and it's softer, but it really doesn't matter what you use. I'm using teeny tiny stitches here. I don't know if you can even see on that arm. And that's going to leave me some room to stick some stuffing in her arm. If teeny tiny stitches aren't your strong suit, maybe just make the pieces a little bit bigger. You could make her arms and legs a little bit thicker so that you have some room even after you've stitched them up to put some stuffing in there. Or maybe you don't even need to do arms and legs, you could just do a body and a head, and then you won't have any small spaces that you need to try and fit stuffing into. Like my kitty here that I'm going to sew up later is really just a body and a head, and you could make a person like that too, and you can make that bigger as well. I just made it smaller because it's a small box. So I added some little eyes onto her with some black thread because I forgot to do that before. If you're going to sew features on, make sure you do that before you finish sewing it all together, because it'll be hard to do it afterward. If you forget to do it, you could add some googly eyes or beads or something. So I've got her all sewn together, her arms and legs all sewn together, and I tied it off so that it won't come undone while I'm trying to stuff her, because this part gets a little bit trickier. So I'm going to take a little bit of stuffing and put it in, and then I'm going to use my chopstick to poke it into her arms and legs. You can use both ends. The bigger end makes it easier to actually get it into her body, and then you can use the little end to push it where you want it to go, and then just keep adding little by little until you've filled up her body. And then I'm going to sew kind of halfway around her head and then stuff her head and sew the rest like I did with the pillow. Alright, so I've got my little stuffed gingerbread doll there, and I'm going to sew her hair on. So I made a piece for the back of her head and a piece for the front that'll not cover her face. And I'm just going to sew those together the way I've been sewing everything else together, only I'm going to make sure that I'm sewing through the top of her head too, so that it stays where it's supposed to stay. So actually I cut her hair to be quite high compared to the rest of her head, so I'm just going to do a few stitches to attach this front piece to the top of her head so that it stays where I want it, and then I'll go around and sew the two pieces of the hair together like I was originally going to do. This is all kind of improvised, so if it doesn't go quite according to plan, you can just change the plan. And no one will ever know. There. So just a few stitches to attach the front piece, and then I'm going to go all the way around to the back piece to attach it. Alright, so her hair didn't turn out quite like my picture, but again, if this was something I was giving to someone, they wouldn't know. they would just think that that's what it's supposed to look like. Because I wouldn't put all my mistakes in a video. Alright, so the camera died for a bit there, so I just kept sewing. Because I figured you kind of got the idea by then. So I finished up this one here. And it opens up to a little kitty cat in the bed. And a little toy fishy. We got this Christmassy box too. And then it opens up to show her in her bedroom there. And she's got her little pet kitty cat. And when she comes out of her bed, you can see her dress and everything. And there's her bed with her pillow. So you can tuck her in there. And then she's easy to take along to play with as well. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Hopefully Stephen will be back tomorrow. So remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. And if you guys make any of these, go on our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It's all Jello Stephen. And show us what you made because we'd love to see it. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.